How's it going? My name's Eric. Today I wanted to talk about how to use fictitious characters and fictitious movies and books and literature in order for us to understand some deeper parts of ourselves in terms of where we are and how we can grow and how can we use these archetypes that we see in movies and books and everything else to create our redemptions, our furthering of what we want, of what we would consider good, of going through the hero's journey if we had to extrapolate that out, right? So 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 what do you mean? Like, okay, so we have fictitious characters. Well, we have the main hero, we have the villain, we have support characters. Okay, now out of any number of those characters in whatever movie you love, whatever movie or TV show or book, you have one character that for one reason or another just calls to you, right? One character, like sure, it might be the main character, but it might be like this side character that's not quote unquote as the main feature of the entire whatever you're listening to or whatever you're watching, but that character calls to you in some way. Now, okay, so if that character calls to you, there's something about that character that you really love, that you really like, that you really identify with. And when I say identify, I mean project yourself into that character. Like literally, that character is the archetype of you. Interesting. So now we have an archetype of a character that has rough similarities with you. Perfect. So now, if we have a character that has rough similarities with you, let's look at their actions, right? Let's write down some characteristics. What are they wearing? What do they do? What are some of the lines? How do they conduct themselves? How do they fit into the plot, right? And with those facts of what they do, what they are, the behaviors that they give, we can extrapolate some principles. Now, those principles will be very interesting because, okay, they have this aspect, they have this aspect that we all have common. Perfect. Now what? Okay, we identified some stuff. Yeah, what does that mean? What does that care? Like, I can identify stuff about me. Yeah, write down some, strength builder 202 or whatever. You can identify all sorts of stuff, but how's that going to help you? Well, this is the next part that's really cool. Now imagine you had a movie character, and so you watch the minute beginning to end, and everything ends perfect. Now imagine there was a feature-length film on that character that you identified with. Now, based on the behavior in the movie, what would be the redemption story of that character? What would be the story arc? What would happen? What would be the inciting incident? What would be the conflict? Like, would it be a conflict of somebody else, or would there be if there was a conflict of somebody else, who would it be? Would it be with the main character in the other story represented as a rival? Do you have maybe uh, something in the character that would be like they're adverse with with uh, some other party or anything? Is there particular traits about the enemy or about the antagonist? Well, if you write down those traits about the antagonist of maybe their backstory, if you had to make one up, what would their backstory? What would the antagonist's backstory be? And you write it down. What would the main motifs of how, like, what would be the master plan? What would be the evil plan that the enemy would do, that the antagonist would do? You write that down. How would they accomplish that? How would they accomplish, like, what would be some of their powers or strengths or whatever? You write those qualities down. Once you write those qualities down, their strengths and kind of what their plan is, then you look back. Okay, now they have their plan, of course. You know, now they're trying to accomplish something. What are they trying to accomplish? You write that down. Now, if they accomplish that, what does that mean to the antagonist? Interesting. You write that down. Well, it would mean that they would able to do whatever they wanted. Cool. Or there's something there, and you know these answers because that character would actually resemble. Actually, this would be interesting because all these characters are fictitious. Okay, and so why people go to movies is that they project themselves into the characters, but they also project the aspects that they want to overcome in the antagonist. So everything that you just wrote down for the antagonist and the story and the hero's journey of overcoming and taking over and maybe rectifying that or becoming whole with something or achieving some sort of unity or uh, redemption of both the hero and the antagonist, or where they come together, they fight and one is defeated, or they're reconciled in such a way. Well, if you look at all those qualities of uh, you know the hero's descent into the dark night of the soul, quote unquote, um, and how they recover, or like, and then you break apart the individual scenes like you're watching a movie, right? Just like you're watching a movie, you take that character all the way from scene one all the way to the very end when they defeat the enemy, and maybe some time afterwards as kind of like the wrap up of what they get in the end, and you analyze every scene of what that means every single time, all the way till the very end of what the antagonist means, and also the supporting characters that would come in to help them through that journey or what they're trying to reconcile. Now, if you do this, if you actually go through and maybe not write down, but you visualize in your head what would be going on in that story. Now, how much of that do you think is the character that the comic book writer intended? Maybe 2%, like the actual character, and some maybe the antagonist if you wanted to go for that, sure. But the thing is that everything in that story was not from the writer, the originator of the content. It was you, right? You projected yourself into the hero, projected yourself into the being aware or recovering from something or taking care of business, or basically every story is the path to enlightenment, right? It's the path of knowing and becoming and pursuing some sort of good, and because they go through the dark and then they realize something that was already there, because realization, whether or not you see something, it's there. And so then they are aware of it, and then they come back, and then they see what is good, and they acquire the traits that would make their life better, right? That would make everything great for them, or at least get closer to a better life for that main character. Now, that main character would be you, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. The antagonist would probably have some features that you would overcome through all these processes that you've already laid out in your head as a visualization, because you've already been immersed in the story because it's you, and then you overcome it. Now you have all the facts, all the detail, all the extrapolated principles from that story, and now with that you can actually take those and cultivate those qualities that you want, so that instead of it just being a story, it becomes actuality. And instead of just watching a movie and seeing somebody else win, you win.